on edge across the country.
Because at the end of the day, what the Asian American community right now is facing is two viruses. One, which is COVID-19, that is affecting all of us. Unfortunately, we're also affected with this racism virus.
Stop Asian hate! Stop Asian hate!
The old me used to let the hatred slide, but now I'm filled with Asian pride. I'm so sick of holding the pain inside.
Our community is bleeding. We are in pain, and for the last year, we've been screaming out for help.
So many of them, our fellow Americans, they're on the front lines of this pandemic trying to save lives. And still, they're forced to live in fear for their lives, just walking down streets in America. It's wrong, it's un-American, and it must stop.
Hello everyone, I'm Erica Riggins. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. We're bringing you a special Justice for All presentation, the Stop Asian American Hate Movement. We are all one community, one beautiful melting pot like no other in this great country. But as we have all been navigating this pandemic, all of us, over the past year, some of our friends, our family members, our neighbors are being forced to endure even more pain. They are being intentionally targeted, harassed, and attacked. And that's something that we want to talk about today and learn how working together, how we can put a stop to it. Right now, the Asian American and Pacific Islander community is standing up and speaking up. The majority of Asian American adults, 8 in 10, say violence against them is rising here in the U.S. That's according to a new survey from the Pew Research Center. And nearly half, 46%, have experienced a painful incident tied to their racial or ethnic background since the pandemic started. Today we're speaking to you from beautiful Clearwater and this beautiful Chiang Mai Thai sushi bar, beautiful restaurant. We want to have a discussion about what's been happening and what we can do as one community to address it, to all stand up, to all speak out. Joining us today, the manager of this lovely establishment, this lovely restaurant.
My name is Sully Luban, manager Chiang Mai Thai and Sushi Bar in downtown Clearwater.
I'm Justin McLean. I'm a mental health therapist and co-owner of a private practice called Home Again Counseling in St. Pete.
My name is Janet Ho. I'm an insurance agent. I volunteer work for SACA, which stands for Suncoast American Chinese Association, and also volunteer another SPIFS, St. Petersburg Folk Fair Society.
Janet, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Michael Tang. I'm an associate professor of medicine at USF Health. I study viruses for a living.
So we want to start off with the just approved COVID-19 hate crimes bill to address the exponential increase in violence and discrimination that we've seen during the pandemic. It had overwhelming bipartisan support in the U.S. Senate. Senators approved the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act 94-1. And it calls on the Justice Department to direct states and law enforcement agencies to bring more attention to the hate crimes that are happening and to create an online tool to report those crimes. The goal is to address hate crimes faster. We need that faster, and to do something about it, to take action. There are still some in our community, we know some of them, who don't understand why it's needed, don't understand why it's necessary, don't think there's a big problem at all. And that's why knowledge is so important. Knowledge is power, and that's why we are all here today. So I wanted to ask you to talk about your experiences, or your family's experiences, or friends, to just remind people of how the pain that we're all feeling in this pandemic, some in our community unjustly are being forced to endure even more.
What we've seen is that this is sort of a cyclical thing. We've seen different events happen in the world, and every time something bad happens that's related to Asian people, then we see another outpouring of Asian hate crimes. It's a problem. And I think actually our brothers and sisters in the other minority communities have experienced something similar, where everything comes in this kind of cycle. So we're seeing a lot more now because we have this virus that has come out of China. People want to put blame on somebody, but it's not something that you can blame somebody for. It's a virus. It doesn't care what color you are. It doesn't care what gender you are. It doesn't care anything about your ethnic origin. And so this becomes a problem when people try to assign blame to a particular group.
Because of the focus on the pandemic, a lot of people get so anxious and they have to point their fingers at somewhere, or some people. So I think that's the main part, is that people have that anxiety that they need to vent.
Echoing their sentiments, really, when it comes down to issues that occur that happen to tangentially relate to Asia in general. Unfortunately, there's an unfortunate truth that a lot of Americans in general don't understand the differences and can distinguish between Chinese versus Vietnamese, Korean, Thai, or Lao. And so simply by looking like this, we become a broad target through no fault of ours.
Yeah. And you're in the, and so you have this restaurant, you have the customer service, all day long, 7 days a week. And so it puts you in a direct position to interact with people and perhaps hear misguided, racist myths, the stereotypes, because of the nature of your business in a restaurant.
Absolutely. There's a component of, as customer service providers, kind of going along to get along. A customer may come in and have a faux accent just to place an order, and we kind of have to just laugh it off just to complete the transaction. But obviously, deep down inside, that definitely affects you, definitely eats away at you.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because to transition to Justin, we talked about what you call microaggressions. We all have seen nationally the blatant acts, the violence, the attacks. There's no disputing that. But there are subtle things that happen, but those are often long-lasting. They have an impact. They're also painful. And so, Justin, talk about what that does to the mindset, to people walking around, how that causes some trauma, whether you've experienced it or not, as you fear experiencing something.
Yeah, like Sonia said, that was a perfect example of a microaggression that happens, and those microaggressions add up, and a lot of times, myself included, living life, sometimes we ignore them, and those things don't go anyway, they stay in there. So eventually it could cause feelings of anxiety, like Janet was saying, or feelings of depression. And I think those microaggressions also fuel stereotypes and bias, like harmful stereotypes and biases that lead to those, to the pointing the finger and the blame and things like that. We should point out, this is before the pandemic. This is long before the pandemic, something that you just mentioned, go along to get along. It's something, you and I are an African American community, so we understand that too. This is, to make that point, this is something long before the pandemic started. Yes. It has been going on, and then like Janet was saying, it's just, it's coming to a head now, just because it is circling back, and there hasn't been a huge increase, and when we're pointing the finger with the blame, this is the most damaging type of blame. It's like Dr. Chang was saying, it's not like an individual person did an individual act. We're pointing the finger as a group of people, or there's something wrong with them, or they're bad, and that breeds feelings of shame, and it is damaging. Absolutely. And Dr. Chang, to come back to you, we're all thankful for your work, your medical knowledge and the expertise you've been lending to us over the past year here in the Tampa Bay community. But can you talk a little bit about the focus on China?
Yeah, I think the thing is that we see these viruses come out from different places, and this particular virus came out from China. In the virology community, we've started becoming a little bit more cognizant about trying to. We used to name viruses after the place that they were derived from. So we have things like Ebola virus, right? Because it came from the Ebola River. But, since these viruses have come out, we're more cognizant that this naming procedure assigns blame in some people's, whether it's conscious or unconscious. So we've specifically tried to avoid that from now. So in the virology community, we try to do this, but, when we have people on TV telling us this is the Wuhan virus or the China virus, it's easy to start getting that blame. That's why we always use these kind of numbers and letters, which are confusing sometimes, but it's really much more accurate to say this is for example, the B117 variant, because it was first detected in the UK, but it's not the UK's fault that it's out. It just happened to be from the UK. Thank you all. This has been a great conversation so far. There's so much more knowledge and insight to share moving forward, and we're going to do just that. Thank you for staying with us. Please stick around for our special Justice for All, the Stop Asian Hate Movement. We'll be right back.